High-performing entrepreneurs have high expectations of ourselves, and so typically that leads to higher performance. But as we grow, we cannot hold on to everything.
Hey lovely, Lisa here, and before we dive into today's episode of She Talks, I have got a little favour to ask you. If this podcast has ever made you feel a little bit more confident, a little bit more inspired, or a little less alone in this wild ride of running your own business, then I would love you to leave us a review on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you're listening. I know it sounds like a small thing, but it really helps get She Talks into the ears of more incredible women just like you, and it helps us keep bringing you the good stuff. And if there's an episode that made you go, oh my God, every woman in business needs to hear this, please share it with someone you love. Text it to your business bestie, add it to your stories, or drop the link in a group chat. However you do it, we are so grateful. All right, that's it from me. Let's jump in. If you've ever spiraled over something small, snapped at your partner, burst into tears mid-Zoom, or just felt completely overwhelmed by life, business, and being everything to everyone, then this episode is for you. Today, I'm joined by clinical psychologist and anxiety expert, Dr. Jodie Lowinger. She's here to help us flip the script on stress, people-pleasing, imposter syndrome, and that high-achieving panic spirals so many of us secretly live in. We talk about how to turn anxiety into action, how to build true confidence, not the fake it till you make it kind, and how to reset your nervous system. It's practical, it's empowering, and it's a sign to stop trying to control everything and start backing yourself instead. So grab a cuppa, take a breath, and let's unpack the real reasons you're feeling stuck and how to move forward with strength. Jodie, welcome to the podcast today.
Yeah, such a pleasure to be here. Looking forward to chatting.
Now, I have to say that anxiety and stress and burnout and overwhelm is like so real for me. Even this week right now, anxiety is high. And I know for my listeners, this is such a big topic. So I'm really excited to chat to you today and try and unpack the conversation in a super authentic, real way, which is very Lisa and Jodie by the sounds of it. There may be some F-bombs, listeners. Just beware. We've discovered we both swear, but also tools that we can learn from this. So I want to start with we know that running a business can be exhausting and exhilarating at the same time, but we know that also female founders are particularly prone to burnout. Why is that?
It comes down to a care factor, and I suppose it's when you're an entrepreneur, it's typically a mission to be able to share your tools, your abilities with the world, which inherently talks to a care factor. And when we care, we give and give and give. And oftentimes that direction of giving is outwards. We're not necessarily very good at giving inwards, right? And so also, it's this certainty versus uncertainty we're trying to achieve in a world that's filled with uncertainty. And when we struggle within the elements that are uncertain, that tips us into that sympathetic nervous system, that fight or flight, which burns our serotonin reserves and tips us into burnout.
I find the uncertainty is, as you've just mentioned, that's where the fear sits. And I sometimes, I don't know if it's because I'm undiagnosed OCD or perhaps it's just the high achiever thing. I've never been diagnosed with anything and I don't feel a connection to ADD like some founders do, but I definitely strive for perfection. And I find for me that not being able to control the future is probably what often brings my anxiety up. It's not even relevant to the now. It's the fear of what could happen. And that's crippling. Is that what your findings are as well?
Yeah, 100%. Anxiety is our discomfort with uncertainty. We are wired to want to be able to predict our environment in order to be able to be the best that we can be, serve as many people as possible, right? And so your dedication, your care factor, it comes back to that. It talks to that heart-driven action. But in a world that's filled with uncertainty, this can be a double-edged sword. So anxiety is actually part of our inherent strengths. It is that dedication and that protective instinct. And so for you as this kick-ass entrepreneur who is giving so much of yourself to help so many people, that really talks to that double-edged sword of anxiety. And you over the years have learned to leverage that superpower and move it into practical action around your strategic goals. And this is the pivot that we as entrepreneurs really inherently do and must do in order to make it sustainable high performance. It's using the adrenaline, but focusing on your opportunities and focusing on your goals instead of focusing on your threats. It's not easy.
Need to break that down a little more, because I think what I heard is that anxiety is almost a superpower, or it's at least in some form a silver lining in other things that I've got going on. Can you say that in some other ways so I can pick up what you're saying there?
Well, the ways I typically do say it is anxiety is your superpower, because it really is. It's that heart and it's that analytical mind. And, you talked to obsessive compulsive traits, and there's a big difference between obsessive compulsive traits and OCD. OCD is when we're struggling to have certainty and it tips us into unhelpful and counterproductive thoughts, feelings, and actions. Whereas obsessive compulsive traits is, I'm really doggedly determined on achieving my goals, and I'm going to be driven by my values and driven by my strategic goals and that care factor and that analytical mind in order to achieve the best that I can achieve. And it's really interesting because oftentimes there is this correlation between ADHD and obsessive compulsive traits, because it's that firing up and it's that attention to wanting to do so much. And it's the capacity to say, this is who I am. These are my superpowers. And I'm going to embrace high performance habits and evidence-based tools in order to hone in and it be the best that I can be in that space.
And what about the trait that I think so many women have that would be a conversation around females, not males, but that kind of thin skin, empathetic, definitely empathic personality? I know so many women struggle from this. It's the part of my story where I've been a rescuer, where I've been the pleaser, the mother, the ex-husband, the people that pushed me to have to be something they needed me to be and didn't allow me to be me. I know so many women experience this in their lives, either through the parents, the school, the partners. It doesn't allow us to be probably like authentically us, because we end up as pleasers. And then the relationship for me on this is that I become quite thin-skinned and very susceptible to, and I'll give you the perfect example, a negative review on my business. That can cripple me. And I suppose my question is that a superpower too? Or how do we, I know it is, but how do we deal with that doesn't cripple us?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it's building awareness around what the drivers are for that. And I love your choice around the example of people pleasing. It's a really classic one. When I'm working with people such as yourself and women and female communities to help them to stand up to that imposter syndrome and stand up to some of the people pleasing elements, it's building awareness around what is driving our behavior at any particular time. And oftentimes, anxiety clusters around elements of uncertainty. And two of those elements of uncertainty, some of the big ticket items which tap into our very primitive survival instincts, is performance anxiety and social anxiety. So performance anxiety is that fear of failure, fear of making a mistake. And again, if we take it to a deeper level, it's the care factor that says I care enough to, want to make sure that I perform well and I don't make a mistake. And then there's social anxiety, which is fear of rejection or fear of embarrassing ourselves or not fitting in, and again, the double-edged sword, which drives us to making sure that these bad things don't happen, right? But we can be vulnerable in that care factor. And one of the representations of vulnerability is people pleasing. So it clusters around a need for certainty and control. And perfectionism is another one of them. So perfectionism, people pleasing, reassurance seeking, being passive because, well, hey, we're definitely not aggressive, but my God, assertive is hard, right? So all of these things, and women, the most brilliant of us women is because of that care factor, we can be driven by some of these unhelpful and self-sabotaging behaviors. So it's recognizing what is driving engagement towards these particular kinds of behaviors and moving out of fear drivers, which says, I must have certainty. I must know that they like me. I must know that they're not going to give me a negative rating, into a values driver that says, oh my goodness, I'm about to swear. I give a shit, right? Now, prefacing this 5 minutes before this podcast, my wing woman, my EA said, make sure you don't swear in this one. So I've just thrown that out of the window. But, we give a shit. I like to say, for people who experience anxiety, you care because you care. If you didn't experience anxiety, you wouldn't be the caring human being. You wouldn't be the kick-ass entrepreneur that you are. I mean, that's a sweeping generalization, of course, but oftentimes it does come with the territory of high-performing individuals. And it's moving out of those fear drivers into values of I care, I am ambitious, I want to be the best that I can be, and moving into that space of assertiveness around what's in your control.
I think it's really hard for women in general to find a happy place with assertiveness. I'm really glad you've even raised this conversation, because I know, having worked in a lot of big enterprise level companies in corporate boardrooms and workplaces, that, I mean, look, between you and me, Jodie, I call it the swinging dick club, right? But one thing that the swinging dick club have going for them is that they have thick skin, and they can give a shit whether I like them or don't like them, or they're not worried about whether a bad review comes in the next week. They mostly don't care. And somehow they're the ones in control of the world. And somehow we're like embracing the kindness, but feel some kind of fear around stepping up and being more assertive or more aggressive. I know for me, this is a real thing. And to be fair, I was in a DV marriage for 8 years, and I genuinely was at risk if I was assertive. So that PTSD trigger for me, and probably for quite a lot of our listeners, is a genuine fear, but not for everybody. And if you've not been physically threatened because you become across as assertive, then that might not be relevant for you. But I think it's almost a cellular thing for women. It's like, don't speak up. I mean, it was only 6 minutes ago women were all stay-at-home mums, Stepford wives kind of thing. So talk to me about healthy assertiveness in women then.
Well, I think assertiveness, by the very nature of it, is entirely healthy. Okay. So the challenge is, we think we're socialized into not being aggressive, and so we move to passive. Our brain is wired towards fight or flight, fight being aggressive, flight being passive. Our brain doesn't necessarily do assertive easily. And so this permission to stand up for ourselves while still respecting others is what assertive is, giving ourselves permission to say, well, assertive is not aggressive. We don't have to lose sight of our underlying values of kindness and care. We don't have to adopt a mindset that says, I'm going to turn into a right old bitch in order to be assertive. That's not what this is about. It's stepping into your power. It's owning your strength and being deeply proud of who you are. It's moving right out of a need to people please, because that's foregoing your power, because you are diverting to others rather than taking ownership of it within yourself. And you're putting your outcome out of your control, because you'll feel great when you get that external validation, but you'll feel really not great when you don't. So assertiveness is different. Assertiveness comes from that heart-driven action outwards, respecting the people around you, but also respecting yourself. It's protecting yourself. It's understanding self-protective boundaries. And it's that space that says, I am driven by my values. And it's more like a emotionally intelligent space, which says, I'm going to be aware of myself. I'm going to be aware of my stakeholders, the people around me. And yes, I am going to be conscious of attending to the people around me, but that's not for the detriment of self. It's very different. So this is talking about power. It's not talking about force. And it's okay to say, I'm not a person who does force. I don't want to do force, but that doesn't mean foregoing your sense of inner strength. And it's about body language. It's about, that solar plexus, that sternum out a couple of millimeters, which sends a message back up to your brain to say you are strong and powerful. Because, when we hold ourselves small, it sends a message up to our brain to say we are small. But we can absolutely send that biofeedback up to our brain to say we've got this. So it's our body language, it's our subliminal cues, and it's the words that we use. It's our vocal tone, and it's our self-belief. It's learning how to stand up to that critical voice and saying you've got this and you deserve this, and moving into a space around your strategic goals.
This is so interesting and almost strikes me as ultimate form of self-love. Like if we can clear away some of the cobwebs that the world has thrown at us over time and step into our own power, then we're able to find this really beautiful balance, which I'll confess I'm trying really hard to find this balance. So the timing of this podcast even today is perfect. And I hope listeners, there's a gold nugget in this podcast today for you at whatever stage of owning your own power that you're also in. But for me, I think what you just shared is probably one of the most exciting things I've heard all year, to be honest, Jodie. And I think majority of women have a fuck off bad relationship with what you just shared. I mean, we could spend the rest of the podcast just breaking this down, because the idea that you are powerful but don't need to overpower others, that your power is a self-sustaining force that allows you to come across as calm and collected and capable, and also about not taking shit from others, but not needing to pull others down. Like, I can honestly tell you that I can't really think of a single woman that I know has got this right. And that's probably a sad state of affairs. And certainly for me here, I'm not just a podcast interviewer in this beautiful podcast. I'm the CEO at SheCom, and my job right now with a team of 60 is to step into my CEO power. And I am practicing assertiveness this week. Literally, it's so relevant to be having this conversation. So if we could talk a little bit more on this topic, because I think it's fascinating, and maybe if you could share with us also some tools for those listening right now that are nodding their heads being like, definitely don't got this right.
Yeah, and I think one of the key messages is this is doable. I want listeners to step into hopefulness around this, because we bring it back to our neuroscience, back to understanding who we are, and understanding that we are all in this together as human beings. And when we can understand the neuroscience that underpins this, you can step into really logical, practical tools that enable you to own your power. So hopefulness around this, and moving out of a sense of differences with others, differences with men, into actually our common first principles to say we, and also aligned to that, to say we can be kick-ass women and own our space as kick-ass women that say, I don't feel comfortable with aggression, and that's okay. That does not mean I am passive. That does not mean I'm foregoing my power. So tools around this. So understanding the drivers is, so awareness is a critical tool in the Mind Strength Toolkit. So when I'm doing courses with women on confidence, assertiveness, and influence, because to your point, this is a key pain point for women, we want to build awareness as one of the most important tools in the toolkit, because oftentimes we do things that we think are helping, but they're the opposite of helpful. So that's first and foremost. And then, as I mentioned earlier, it's learning about our subconscious ways of engaging. First of all, body language gives so much. We forego so much of our power just by the way we hold ourselves. So, that magnificent work by Amy Cuddy on Power Pose, I absolutely adore it. And it's incredible how when we actually just strike a pose, we are sending such incredible messages back up to our brain that sends messages back down to our nervous system to embrace our goals. And not only are we telling ourselves that we've got this, we're telling others, don't freaking mess with me because I'm bloody awesome. Okay. And that's not aggression, right? That's just telling it how it is. So let's practice that power pose now. It basically, Amy Cuddy talks to eye contact, shoulders back, hands on hips, and feet hip width apart. Now, you and I are both sitting down, but we can kind of do it in our chair as well. But I like to keep it really simple. And in essence, it's, as I mentioned earlier, just the solar plexus out 2 millimeters, the sternum out. So, we could do that chest thrust, let's say, and that by default puts our shoulders back. Now, it opens up our lungs, it oxygenates our muscles, and it sends a message back up to our brain. Because if you think about our organs, they're exposed by the very nature of us being on 2 feet. And so when we're feeling threatened, we close in to self-protect. But to send a message back up to our brain to say we are strong and powerful, that's doing the opposite. So that's biofeedback. So how does that feel for you?
No, it's amazing. And I think even just the looking up and out, I mean, that's telling my body, my brain, my heart, and the world around me that I'm forward thinking and that I'm taking responsibility for myself and I'm stepping out into the world. So it even feels better to just take that body language. And I want to share with our listeners too, what I just talked about in my situation of 60 team and CEO. It's the same, right, for a mum that has dogs and kids and husbands who might be listening with a small business or even working for somebody else. The same tools apply, and we need to be the same upwards, outwards, and assertive for our children. I mean, I've got a teenager. She terrifies me a lot of the time, and I'm thinking it's the same. Is it the same? Tell me, Jodie.
Oh my God, it is so the same. It's remarkable how similar, if not exactly the same. I've got 3 children myself, and yes, I commonly get terrified. And I feel like a permanent novice in that space. But yeah, when I'm working, I do a lot of work with school communities and parents as well in the work that I do. And oftentimes I'm using corporate analogies in a school context or in a parenting context, and I use parent analogies in a corporate context because in essence we're all leaders, right? So parents are embracing leadership tools in that context, and we as business leaders embrace parenting tools in that business context as well. So fundamentally similar. And yeah, it's about owning your strength and stepping into your power and saying to ourselves, we've got this. It's amazing how even though we want to be, let's say, the vulnerable, authentic leader, oftentimes when we are giving off some of those messages, it's kind of like we're exposing our Achilles heel, and it's not necessarily helpful in various contexts. There's so much I could talk about in terms of practical tools in all of those domains. But again, bringing it back to that sense of fundamental principles will help you to embrace your hopes and dreams. I want everybody to feel hopeful, positive, and empowered. That evidence-based tools can actually enable you to achieve whatever it is that you want to achieve.
I love that. I'm going to practice that a lot more. And I feel like the minute that I've opened my chest up and my shoulders are back, that my breathing sets a deeper lung capacity. And I know I can speak for myself here and probably a lot of our listeners is that when I am stressed and overwhelmed, I shallow breathe. And that simply exacerbates the anxiety cycle. And then I feel panic attacks can happen as a result. And actually, it's probably just that I've stopped breathing. Is that really common for women?
Really common, really common. And you talked to your own life experiences around trauma and that amygdala hijack that takes us into that fight or flight action. And, oftentimes high performing entrepreneurs have got some semblance of a trauma background. It's again that double-edged sword that says I must have certainty in order to feel safe, and the adrenaline that can kick in, and we learn to hone that and move it into a space of practical action that enables us to achieve our goals. Whatever the trauma, sometimes it can be bullying in childhood, sometimes it can be, in my experience, I have a mum who was born into very traumatic life experiences who raised me in an environment of high anxiety. And for me, it's led to a life experiencing high anxiety at many times and the notorious imposter syndrome that is with me to this day. And so we learn to recognize it, to stand up to the stories and embrace the tools. But back to your point around the incredible tool of leveraging our breath and slowing our breathing down. So in these contexts where it might be triggering to put us into that fight or flight headspace, it's not so much about deep breathing, because when we're in fight or flight, our muscles tense up. So when we tense up, if you want to practice this now, to tense up your chest muscles and try to breathe deeply, what happens?
Well, it's restricted.
It's restricted, exactly. It doesn't go very far. So in order to re-engage the parasympathetic nervous system, which in turn opens up our strategic mind and takes the focus away from our threats and moves it into our goals and our strategic direction, it's leveraging the long, slow out breath. It's much more simple than we think. It's purely the long, slow out breath through pursed lips, as if we are cooling down a cup of tea, let's say. Let's do that together now. Long, slow out breath through pursed lips.
It's kind of calming on the brain when you do it. It's like it distracts the brain from stuck in the monkey brain, and you actually focused on the lips and the breath.
Spot on. Exactly. It instantaneously relieves that muscle tension, opens up our strategic mind. So it's practicing that. I could, go through a more lengthy process of that, but we'll keep it very, very succinct today. Really, with the in-breath, you just let your lungs fill up naturally. But what that does, stress is cumulative through the day. And so when we can take these circuit breaker moments to bring stress levels back down to baseline, what you're then doing is giving out that sense of calm. You as a CEO, we bounce off the energy that we give out, right? We bounce off the energy, especially empathic people such as yourself and such as this incredible community that you are serving so beautifully. We bounce off the energy that we give out. So people around us, our leadership team, our whole organizational community, our family as well, our friends, we have a duty of care as business leaders, as entrepreneurs, to make sure that we are giving out energy of calm. And that's tricky if we are feeling high anxiety and we're in the sympathetic nervous system. So by leveraging the power of the breath and bringing your stress levels back closer to baseline, I use various analogies for this, but what is going to happen is people will bounce off that energy. And this is all part of building a culture, a high performing culture, a culture of psychological safety, a growth mindset culture. So it's that duty of care to self and duty of care to others to modulate the nervous system that we're in and to engage in evidence-based tools to enable us to do that. Because our brain will want to jump to fight or flight. It will want to jump to certainty, to control, to people pleasing, to all of this. So we come back to the power of the breath to circumvent that, to build in that space between situation and response and re-engage in our strategic direction.
Running an e-commerce business can feel lonely, right? Like no one in your world really understands what you do. And that's why I started SheCom, to create a space where women in e-commerce can connect, grow, and support each other. Whether you're starting or scaling to your biggest months yet, there's a place for you here inside SheCom. Inside of our community, we share strategies, wins, and real talk about what it takes to grow a brand you love. Come on over and join us at Instagram at shecom_co, because happiness is better when we do it together. What about the multitasking nature of women? I want to talk about that for a moment, because my observations of my community of women and my listeners is that we have become really adept at juggling it all. The pressure is very real. And I feel this is a much greater conversation around the generational shift for us as women, where we are both providers and nurturers and homemakers all at the same time. And, the husbands, bless them, often don't think of things like, do I have enough snacks for my child's school lunch tomorrow? And did that washing need to be shifted to the dryer because it's raining outside, at the same time as we're often running companies, and plenty of my listeners have jobs as well as running companies as well as mums. And I feel for me, like my husband summarized it the other night when I was having a crying on the floor, panic attack moment of, sweetie, you've run your own companies for 17 years. And for 17 years, you have sprinted, collapsed, sprinted, collapsed, sprinted, collapsed, with almost no gaps in between that. And that's a lot of nervous system fraying. And I think I could deal with many aspects of it. The bit that catches me is just this multitasking. It's this incessant, I wake up at 4 or 5 in the morning and my brain downloads 2 or 3 things I forgot the day before. So at, 4 or 5 in the morning, I'm on my phone pinging those things out because I missed them the day before. And my brain has been trawling all night of the things I've missed. Now, I don't know if that's a learnt behavior. I don't remember being like this as a child. Is this just my body catching up with what I put it through? And is this healthy? I mean, I know it's not healthy. Tell me what I need to know.
Well, first of all, it's only a problem if it's a problem. Okay. So, some people are go, go, go like this, and it's working for them and they love it and they're flourishing and thriving. So let's premise it that if it's serving you and it's not tipping you into burnout, or if it's not actually driven by burnout, because what you've described can actually be the picture of what burnout looks like, then it's only a problem if it's a problem. However, what you described can actually be the signs of burnout. So burnout, some of the hallmark features of burnout is early morning wakefulness. So I'm waking up at 3 a.m., I'm waking up at 4 a.m., or 4:30, and it's not because I've set my alarm for 4:30. It's because I am just absolutely frazzled and wired, and my brain is going at a million miles an hour like a hamster on a treadmill, worry spiral, focusing, scanning for threats, threat, 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 threat. And that is oftentimes some hallmark features of burnout. Our body gives us signs that can be an indication that my serotonin is in red zone. I am depleted. And we typically cannot push through burnout. It is a physiological burnout that says you must look after yourself. And in that, the tools to help with burnout are really helpful with the right tools, whether it's anxiety, stress, low mood, burnout. These are all very helpable human experiences. So that's number one. Number two is often when we are moving in a space of frazzle and overwhelm because there's so much that we want to do, but not enough hours in the day and we're being pulled in all directions, it might feel like high performance, but we're just pushing and trying to push through. So what I would suggest is we move it into a space of high performance rhythms. High performance rhythms say, I'm going to choose to wake up at 4:30 in the morning, or I'm going to choose to wake up at 5 a.m., or I'm going to choose to wake up at 6 a.m. And I'm going to carve out time for X, Y, and Z. And I'm going to be quite purposeful in identifying, first of all, my values. Second of all, my strategic goals. I'm going to move into strategic high performance habits, which say these are my annual high performance rhythms. These are my quarterly. These are my monthly. These are my weekly. These are my daily. And I'm going to recognize that while you are a kick-ass high performer, you're not a robot. And there are only so many hours in the day. And while your business is incredibly important to you, so is your partnership with your life partner, if that is applicable to whoever is out there. And so are your children, if that is applicable to whoever is out there. And so is yourself, right? And so it's recognizing these are all part of strategic high performance goals and being purposeful in moving out of chaos into strategy and taking control of your life rather than life being in control of you. Now, is this easy? Absolutely not, right? Absolutely not. We are born imperfect, yet we strive for perfection. And this is, a fight or flight driver. So we have to move it into sustainable high performance. And then it's looking at what does sustainable high performance actually mean? And when you can leverage the right toolkit and the right strategies, and you're taking control of it rather than it taking control of you, we move out of the sympathetic nervous system. We still leverage the adrenaline that will be there, but it's alignment to flourishing and it's alignment to sustainable high performance.
That's so interesting. I definitely relate to the burnout. I know I've burnt out multiple times in my adult life, and I'm very aware that I'm in burnout at the moment. And for listeners, for me, one of my things is dizziness and nausea. I know that is my over secretion of different hormones in the body that are at odds with each other that make me feel physically ill when I'm trying to power through. So I 100% identify with the burnout bit. But traditionally, I've always been given the advice like work less, sleep more. But that doesn't actually help me at all, because as you've already identified, I am a high performing person. And perhaps what you've just given me today is a lot of hope around the idea that making sure this is a clear decision that I choose this, but I'm going to be in a high performance mode as opposed to a burnout mode. And definitely I have my goals in this space. I've got a revenue target at which I drop a general manager into my business so that I can not work as often. And there are solves that sit there that allow me not to be as connected to parts of my business that I know will help my nervous system. So I love this, and I'd love to know what your take is on the conversation that a lot of people have, which was sleep more, do less. And that doesn't always work for women, because that's actually not a really good solve. I mean, sure, I'd love to sleep more, but you're 100% right. It's burnout that wakes me between 3 and 5 every day. It's real. But, sleep more, no, that's not really a solve.
No, and you're spot on again. And when I'm coaching CEOs and entrepreneurs, often burnout is one of the key touch points that we work on, is managing and preventing burnout, right? And so it's very interesting because mindset is one of the key factors that we work on to manage and prevent burnout. Because if we're engaging and operating in a fight or flight mindset, that burns our serotonin and is probably one of the most fundamental contributors to burnout. Worry, trying to control the uncontrollables, etc., making our goals unrealistic, let's say. That's not to say we don't want to make incredibly, North Star goals, for sure. But we want to recognize the power of mastering your mindset, because we can be working 18-hour days and be in a flow state, or 16-hour days, let's say, and be in a flow state where the dopamine is just absolutely surging through our bloodstream, and we are in a hell yeah, let's do this. This is bloody awesome, and we are thriving. Now, I'm not saying that sleep is not critically important, because it is. Step 4 of the methodology, the mind strength method that I work on with my clients, is all about well-being. It's all about recognizing and respecting mind-body wellness. And one of the foundation stones in this, and it's not rocket science, it's deeply evidence-based, is sleep. But what we want to do is say, if I'm worried about not getting enough sleep, the thing that goes out the window is sleep, because when we're in fight or flight, our melatonin shuts down and we've got adrenaline and cortisol, which prevents us from getting to sleep. So starting to be kinder to ourselves around sleep and embracing imperfection around our sleep goals actually is one of the strategies to help get a better night's sleep. Ironically, it's quite paradoxical when we're talking about sleep. It's like, accept not sleeping in order to get to sleep. But while we want to recognize best practice around the mind-body part of high performance, it's understanding that saying I must get my 8 hours sleep a night as an entrepreneur who's juggling kids and juggling family and juggling work and juggling everything is just going to add weight on our shoulders and add to our critical voice that's shouting in our ear saying, not good enough, not good enough, not good enough. So there's lots that can be done, again, to help with sleep in and of itself, but also to help to manage and prevent burnout. Lots of mindset tools. Also, context tools around acceptance of what's out of our control. This is why so many people were moving into deep burnout in COVID, because there was a lot, we were thrown into a world contextually where there was a lot that was out of our control, and that tips us into burnout when we are trying to control the uncontrollables. So many things over and above sleep more. What was it? What did you say? Sleep more, work less?
Yeah, not possible. But let's talk control for just a second, because my beautiful husband, who is the house husband at home now, I'm I suppose the worker bee of the two of us, and that makes a really beautiful anchor at home for me and is very deeply nourishing and supporting on my nervous system. But he's a really big fan of the control circle, and so last night, for example, we're on the couch and I'm sharing with him, it's been about 7 days after many months of almost no anxiety. I had this horrible gut drop about 7 days ago where somebody told me something about a cash flow hole coming up that actually wasn't real or true. And it literally brought my terror to the surface of running out of money in business, which is one of my PTSD things. Many women in business who, 17 years and 7 companies and, many cash flow holes. After a while, that does wear down our nervous system. But I've had 7 days now of a 3 out of 10 anxiety that just won't dissipate. So I'm sitting on the couch last night with my husband and we're breaking it down. What are the things that might be contributing to this anxiety? And each thing, there was around about 8 or 9 pretty significant things that are happening in my life right now that are absolutely contributing to this sense of anxiety. But what was so interesting, and what I want to bring this back to for listeners as we get towards the end of the podcast today, is control, a circle of control. There was, of the 8 or 9 things, there was like 2 or 3 things that I have any sense of control over. The rest are things that are led by others that are absolutely and utterly outside my circle of control. And the things that are in my circle of control, we were able to break down and come up with strategies that I could implement today. But the rest I have to basically somehow find peace with or let go of. Is that your experience? And this must be real for more than just me. What's the best exercise here for women to do in those moments?
I think what you did was really powerful. You got it out of your head, you got some distance, you got some objectivity, and it enabled you to move into a space of practical problem solving. So when we keep things whirring around in our mind, typically we focus on all of the possible things that might go wrong, and it leads to feeling worse rather than feeling better. So in that moment, getting it down, whether it's on a spreadsheet or whether it's some other form of getting it out of our head and moving it into a more objective space and moving out of worry of what's out of our control into acceptance of what's out of our control and practical problem solving around what's in our control, is already such a wonderful version of empowered action. So, power to you for engaging in that process. And as you saw in the moment, well, I'll ask you, how did you feel after doing that? What happened after that?
Well, I mean, I slept really well. I actually slept till 6 this morning. So there's your answer.
Well, see, well done to you. How brilliant is that? And you saw through that experiment that you did the power of that action. So this is fundamental. And then it's not easy to accept what's out of our control. As I mentioned, this is part of the tools. And then leveraging the team, working out, am I trying to hold on to things for a need to maintain control? Where can I delegate? Delegation isn't abdicating. Delegating is, as we grow, this is the challenge with an entrepreneur, is oftentimes when our business is small, we can do everything, and making sure, because we're maintaining control, making sure, and high performing entrepreneurs have high expectations of ourselves. And so typically that leads to higher performance. But as we grow, we cannot hold on to everything. And it's that challenge around wanting to maintain control, which is a fight or flight action, into now learning the tools of how to build a high performing team, recruiting based on values and based on all of the things that we know are part of that high performance toolkit. And then it's leaning into the discomfort of where can I delegate and how can I do this in a strategic way? And how can I be the best CEO that I can be to maintain a high performance culture, and understanding how to make growth sustainable, which is part of the steps that are involved in this.
I feel I could talk to you about this for days, and unfortunately we can't because we're out of time. But what I would love to know, Jodie, is a couple of books. It might be your own or it might be others that I might be able to go away and read that would extend these tools that you've taught me today on the podcast. What do you recommend that women use as a resource here?
So my book is called The Mind Strength Method, 4 Steps to Curb Anxiety, Conquer Worry and Build Resilience. Yeah, it's helping a lot of people, both in Australia and around the world. And it's cover to cover with practical tools to be able to help with anxiety, stress, low mood and burnout, boost confidence, smash imposter syndrome, and bolster your mind-body well-being. So by all means, that's a practical toolkit in and of itself. And it's a joy to share that with everybody out there. As far as other books that come to mind, I think anything that really helps with evidence-based principles around acceptance and commitment therapy is a really great body of clinical psychology strategies, but also, just various top books around entrepreneurship. There's so many out there. It's hard to think about some off the top of
I'm
my
going to go by my mind strength method because I have really enjoyed talking to you today about these things. And I feel a sense of hopefulness. I hope our listeners do too. I think all too often when we consider burnout and the high achieving syndrome that a lot of us women are under, we also feel a sense of shame about it, like we're broken or there's something wrong with us. So what I love about today's podcast is that you've reframed some of these things as a sense of superpower that needs to be monitored and watched and lovingly cared for and tended, but that it's where I feel very hopeful. So I thank you for joining us on the podcast today, Jodie, and I've enjoyed the chat.
I've loved the chat as well, and thank you for the opportunity. I do work with groups of women on smashing imposter syndrome, building confidence, assertiveness, and influence. And so if you want to engage directly, that's probably the path to doing that. But otherwise, it's such a pleasure to speak with you all today.
Amazing. And we'll pop your links in our show notes. But to our beautiful listeners today, if you've loved the episode, don't forget to hit follow so that we can notify you when new episodes drop. And don't forget to leave us a review if you've enjoyed today's episode. Thank you, Jodie.
Such a pleasure. Take care, everyone. Bye for now.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of She Talks. I hope today's conversation sparked ideas, gave you strategies you can put into action, and reminded you that you're never alone on this journey. If you loved this episode, head over to shecom.co for today's show notes, exclusive freebies, and special offers from our sponsors. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe so you never miss a future episode. Until next time, keep showing up, keep building, and most importantly, keep talking.